11 spine-chilling midnight shift encounters, terrifying stories revealed to haunt your sleep. Rachel's heart thudded against her ribcage as she wiped the counter of the gas station, glancing at the shadows creeping through the flickering fluorescent lights. The night shift was always a test of endurance, but tonight felt different. There was something in the air, a weight that made her skin crawl. She could hear the faint hum of the cooler, the ticking clock, and outside, the echo of her own breath mixed with the ominous silence that felt alive, watching her. As the bell chimed, signaling another customer's entrance, her skin prickled. The figure just beyond the neon glow of the sign caught her eye, an outline that lingered too long, almost as if it belonged there, haunting the edges of her reality. It clung to the darkness like a predator lying in wait. Whispers danced on the wind, chilling to the bone, reminiscent of local legends involving specters that once wreaked havoc in Elmwood. Innocent at first glance, her quiet suburban life felt tainted, now teetering on the brink of madness. The clock struck 3 as Rachel filled a gas tank, a chill wrapping around her spine like a serpent. There he was again, the shadow lurking just out of reach, stirring unease deep within her. Who watched her? Who waited in the dark? The stories of the townsfolk surged to the front of her mind. Folk tales of spirits who guarded their secrets with vigilant fury. She brushed the thoughts away, rationalizing that they were mere fabrications of her sleepless mind. But then Rachel caught a glimpse of Mr. Thompson polishing his vintage car in the driveway. His friendly smile seemed too wide, too calculated tonight. The moment their eyes met, something shifted. It felt like he was peering inside her soul, laying bare her fears. Paranoia erupted within. What did he know? She shook off the thought, convincing herself to trust the friendly face next door. The very fabric of Elmwood was stained with camaraderie, after all, or so she believed. After another hour, the wind howled, casting shadows that danced across the parking lot. Time blurred and tension simmered. Ethan's face flashed in her mind, a reminder of the joy buried beneath layers of dread. Just then, the lights flickered, plunging her into darkness for a heartbeat that felt eternally long. Her breath quickened, and she could sense someone watching, their gaze piercing through the heavy void. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Mustering what courage remained, she stepped outside, her heart pounding as she searched for the figure, desperate for clarity. But there he stood, at the edge of the gas station, unearthly calm, like he knew the secrets buried beneath their seemingly normal lives. The once familiar street transformed into a haunted landscape. Dread pooled in her stomach. What truth lay hidden? What horrors would she uncover in this web of uncertainty? The community she trusted morphed into a sinister trap. With every step she took toward the silhouette, a question echoed in her mind. Was she ready to lay bare the chilling threads that bound them all? As the figure melted further into the gloom, Rachel froze, her senses screaming. The nightmare had only just begun. The chill in the air deepened as Rachel hesitated, frozen at the threshold of discovery. The figure, so close yet unnervingly distant, stirred a primal fear within her. With the gas station lights casting eerie shadows, she struggled to tear her eyes away, feeling the pull of the unknown drawing her deeper. "Who are you?" she forced out, her voice quavering as it mingled with the rustle of leaves overhead. No response, just silence that clung to the night like a suffocating blanket. Taking a cautious step forward, she braced herself for whatever could emerge from the darkness. The outline remained still, unnaturally so, as if it drew strength from the shadows rather than the light. Fear flooded her, leaving tangles of dread in its wake. Did he even exist, or was he merely a manifestation of her unraveling sanity? Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed from behind her, shattering the silence. Rachel spun around, heart racing. A group of teenagers stood at the entrance of the gas station, their faces lit by the bluish glow of their phones. They laughed, oblivious to the tense atmosphere. But their laughter felt sinister, like hunters mocking their prey. "Hey, Rachel, you scared of your own shadow?" one of them taunted, the words slicing through the night like glass. She wanted to shout back, accuse them of being ignorant fools, but she was too preoccupied with the figure still looming in the darkness. "Not scared," she croaked, forcing a smile that felt too broken to hold. The teens' laughter faded as they caught sight of the shadow, the amusement slipping from their faces as realization slowly dawned. "Dude, what the hell is that?" another one murmured, shout replaced by an unsettling curiosity. Rachel turned back, panic gripping her throat. The figure leaned slightly forward, revealing nothing but dark emptiness where human features should have been, an abyss staring back at her. "Get inside, now!" she shouted, her instincts igniting like a flame. She rushed toward the gas station as the teenagers scrambled behind her. As the door slammed shut, Rachel's heart thundered against her ribs. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered again, bathing them in an ominous glow. "What was that?" one of the teens asked, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," Rachel admitted, trying to steady her voice. The whispering began again, but louder this time, a cacophony of voices winding around their ears like twisted vines. Each word resonated with a chilling familiarity, echoing the horrifying tales of Elmwood she thought she could brush off. The group huddled together, breathing heavily, their faces painted with terror. Rachel could feel their eyes darting to the windows. Outside, the figure was gone, but dread remained like a thick fog. Just as relief began to settle in, the bell above the door chimed again. A quick glance confirmed her worst fears. Another customer had entered. The man stood there, his features obscured by the hood of his jacket, casting a long shadow that consumed the entrance. A sinister smile crept across his lips, dripping with something malevolent. He lifted his head, revealing pale, sunken eyes that seemed to glow with a knowing malevolence. "Rachel," he called softly, his voice a murmur that felt like ice sliding down her spine. Suddenly, everything felt wrong. In her gut, she knew another nightmare was about to unravel. The vision swirled around her, spirits lurking, secrets buried deep, and now this figure with its haunting familiarity. Her breath hitched as she realized with terror they had brought something back with them. As the tension escalated, Rachel forced herself to think, who was this man, and what did he want with them? Deep down, she sensed that knowing him might lead to answers, or, far worse, reveal more horrors hidden within Elmwood. The mystery thickened as the figure took a step forward, and Rachel's heart raced.
She had to uncover the truth, or she might never escape this waking nightmare. The line between ally and enemy was blurring, and as the stranger spoke her name again, a single thought tormented her. Who could she truly trust? What he would reveal next could shatter everything. Rachel felt her pulse quicken, the terror that had simmered now boiling over. The man's voice echoed in her mind, wrapping her thoughts in a vice. "What do you want?" she managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper. The smirk on his face widened, revealing teeth that glinted like a predator's. "You know, don't you?" he said, stepping closer. The air thickened with an oppressive dread. It felt like the walls were closing in, the dim fluorescent lights flickering above them, casting jittery shadows on their terrified faces. The teenagers were glued to the spot, eyes fixed on the intruder, their bravado evaporated into thin air. The laughter that had once surrounded them had turned to muted murmurs of fear. Each second stretched painfully, mirroring the tightness in Rachel's chest. "Please, just leave us alone," one of the boys pleaded, his voice shaking.
But the man simply chuckled, a low, gravelly sound that made Rachel shiver. "Leave? Who said anything about leaving?" He leaned forward, his breath rancid and cold, an icy wind that swirled around Rachel, filling her lungs with suffocating despair. "You've unwittingly invited forces beyond your understanding." Rachel's stomach flipped. She thought back to the stories, rumors that flitted about in whispered tones among the townsfolk. She had always dismissed them, but now they latched onto her like broken branches tearing at her spirit. Dark spirits, curses that could turn friends into foes, the vengeful dead returning to claim what was theirs. What if they weren't just stories? "Get out," she demanded, forcing her voice to sound steadier. "Get out, or I'll call the police." She reached for her phone, but the moment felt hollow. She could hear the desperation in her own voice, the way hysteria clawed at her words. Did she even want help? His dark eyes glowed brighter, a reflection of torment, and a laugh caught in his throat. "The police? They can't save you. They haven't been able to save Elmwood for decades," he said mockingly. "None of you will escape what you've unearthed." "What have we done?" Rachel asked, her mind racing. She knew they had dug up something at the old cemetery, but was that really it? Her hands shook as she fumbled with the phone, the screen glowing back at her like a beacon of hope tainted by lurking shadows. "Tell us what you mean," she pleaded, her voice cracking. The knowledge she sought felt like bars closing in on her. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from outside, rattling the gas station windows. The teenagers screamed, instinctively pressing against each other. Rachel's heart dropped as she turned her gaze back to the door. "Something is coming," the man whispered, his smile fading into a blank expression of grim excitement. Rachel could feel it, a heavy, foreboding presence pressing against the very fabric of reality surrounding them. As the commotion outside escalated, a cacophony of haunting shrieks mixed with laughter twisted through the air, echoing off the gas station walls. "Did you think you could grave rob, Rachel?" he murmured, eyes narrowing. "You woke them up." The lights flickered fiercely, casting uncertain shapes across the room, and she swore she saw shadows moving outside. Whatever it was drawing closer. With her heart hammering in her chest, Rachel looked around at her friends, their faces a mixture of horror and disbelief. They had to escape, but where would they go? Did they even have time? The man raised a finger, pointing at Rachel, his voice drenched in malice. Ask yourself this. When the truth comes out, will you still be standing with your friends? Or will you find out who is truly your enemy? The grim echo of his voice faded into the chaos outside, leaving a chilling question hanging in the air. Who would survive this night? And who would they lose?
Fear coursed through Rachel as she pushed the door open. The time for answers was slipping fast, and they had to decipher the unfolding nightmare before it consumed them all. The moment Rachel stepped outside, chaos engulfed her. The shrieks intensified, twisting through the night like a monstrous orchestra. She stumbled, clutching the doorframe, fighting to comprehend the sight before her. The street was alive with movement, shadows darting between the flickering light of the gas station sign, which fought to stay lit against the terror surging through the night. Her friends spilled out behind her, their faces as pale as moonlight, wide eyes scanning the darkness, searching for the source of the terror that wrapped around them like a suffocating fog. "Where is everyone?" one of the girls called out, panic rising in her voice. They had come to the gas station for a fun night, not for this horror. Rachel's heart raced as she strained to hear over the cacophony. A strange sound, a low, guttural growl, escaped the shadows, rumbling like distant thunder. She turned her eyes toward the edge of the forest, where the trees swayed unnaturally in the cool wind, limbs twisting and turning as if beckoning to them. "Get back inside!" Rachel shouted, her own voice barely breaking through the chaos as fear gripped her throat. But the group stood frozen, trapped between the allure of the unknown and the crushing weight of dread coiling tighter around them. "Wait!" a boy yelled, pointing toward the road. "Look!" Rachel followed his gaze, heart pounding like a war drum. There were figures emerging from the periphery, shrouded in darkness, dueling with shadows. She couldn't make out their features, but the way they moved, it was wrong, jerky and stilted, like marionettes manipulated by a twisted puppeteer. They were coming closer. "Run! We need to get to the cars!" Rachel yelled, urgency flaring within her. The darkness behind them felt alive, as if it were breathing, waiting for the moment they might slip up and become part of its ghastly narrative. The group broke into a sprint, adrenaline pushing them to escape the lurking horrors. The gas station lights flickered once more, casting erratic beams over the pavement, illuminating faces twisted in pure fear. Rachel's legs burned as she dashed toward the parking lot, glancing back to see the silhouette of the man they'd encountered inside. He stood in the doorway, a cruel smile plastered across his face, as if savoring their panic. "What did we bring?" someone cried from behind, the question an echo of their shared horror. Panic surged through Rachel as she reached her car, fingers trembling as she fumbled for her keys. The sounds of clamoring footsteps drew closer, enough for her to sense the hunger in the air, the electrifying fear that crawled down her spine. "Open the door!" she screamed, turning to see one of her friends struggling with his own car.
The growls from the shadows deepened, a chorus of distorted murmurs blending with their ragged breaths. Rachel's heart sank as she saw the first figure break through the tree line, limbs long and sinewy, eyes hollow yet glinting with an otherworldly hunger. It paused, twisting its head as if tasting the night air, surveying the frightened group before it. "Drive! We have to drive!" Rachel shouted, heart pounding as she climbed into her car, slamming the door behind her. The sound was deafening, reverberating through her skull. She saw her friends hastily scrambling into their own vehicles, the air thick with desperation. But then, with a sickening certainty, the ground began to rumble underfoot. It felt alive, pulling and pushing, almost as if it were shifting to swallow them whole. "What's happening?" someone screamed, fists gripping their steering wheel with white-knuckled terror. Rachel's eyes flicked to the horizon, where the darkness had begun to spread like a stain, devouring everything in its path. The man's warning replayed in her mind. "You've unwittingly invited forces beyond your understanding." "Start your engines!" Rachel shouted, voice barely breaking through the sound of chaos. As the engines roared to life, the figures moved closer, their predatory movements unhurried, as if savoring the impending terror. The night was no longer just dark. It had become a living nightmare, a twisted game teetering on the edge of reality. Someone burst out, "They won't let us go!" But Rachel couldn't wrap her head around that thought. They had to move, or they'd be like the whispers, lost to the night. "Go!" she screamed again, heart racing. Just then, everything went dark. The lights in the gas station flickered off, casting them into a consuming void. Silence fell, thick and suffocating, and then, crammed in the pitch black of their cars, came the bone-chilling sound of a voice. "You can run, but you can't hide." Suddenly, a beam of light pierced the shadows, revealing more figures surging toward them, eyes glistening with hunger, and Rachel realized the true nightmare was only just beginning. "Drive! Drive!" she screamed, breathless with fear, as the darkness encroached, hungry for lives unclaimed. What would they discover when the shadows finally swallowed them whole? Engines roared in a frantic symphony, but no one moved. The darkness wrapped around them like a predator, and Rachel felt a cold sweat trickle down her back. Her friends were all around her, faces pale, eyes wild with terror. "Why aren't we moving?" one shouted, her voice cracking. "Get out! Get out! We have to get away!" Rachel urged, heart hammering against her rib cage, but the oppressive fear made every second stretch into eternity. The words felt heavy in the air, like stones cast into a lake. They barely made a ripple. The beam of light that had pierced the blackness flickered, as if unsure it should remain. And in the shadows, the figures started to close in. Someone burst out, "They won't let us go!" But Rachel couldn't wrap her head around that thought. They had to move, or they'd be like the whispers, lost to the night. "Go!" she screamed again, heart racing. Just then, everything went dark. The lights in the gas station flickered off, casting them into a consuming void. Silence fell, thick and suffocating, and then, crammed in the pitch black of their cars, came the bone-chilling sound of a voice. "You can run, but you can't hide." Suddenly, a beam of light pierced the shadows, revealing more figures surging toward them, eyes glistening with hunger, and Rachel realized the true nightmare was only just beginning. "Drive! Drive!" she screamed, breathless with fear,
as the darkness encroached, hungry for lives unclaimed. What would they discover when the shadows finally swallowed them whole? Engines roared in a frantic symphony, but no one moved. The darkness wrapped around them like a predator, and Rachel felt a cold sweat trickle down her back. Her friends were all around her, faces pale, eyes wild with terror. "Why aren't we moving?" one shouted, her voice cracking. "Get out! Get out! We have to get away!" Rachel urged, heart hammering against her rib cage. But the oppressive fear made every second stretch into eternity. The words felt heavy in the air, like stones cast into a lake. They barely made a ripple. The beam of light that had pierced the blackness flickered, as if unsure it should remain, and in the shadows, the figures started to close in.
"I can't see!" someone cried. "Just drive, Rachel!" a boy's voice echoed, frantic. "They're coming! They're coming!" With hands trembling, Rachel turned the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered before roaring back to life, but time felt like molasses, thick and heavy. The darkness pressed against the windows, a living wall filled with hungry eyes that gleamed like stars in a night sky devoid of hope. "Drive!" It wasn't just a command, it was a plea. The headlights flickered on, but they couldn't pierce the inky darkness that hung just beyond their reach. She slammed her foot down on the accelerator, feeling the car jump forward. Their world suddenly narrowed to the narrow beam of the headlights, illuminating twisted trees, gnarled limbs reaching out like skeletal hands grabbing for them. But before they could escape, the creatures spilled from the forest, erupting into view under the headlights. Their forms were grotesque, impossibly elongated limbs twisted into unnatural angles, skin glistening with an otherworldly sheen. Rachel felt bile rise in her throat. "Go! Go! Go!" her friends screamed, a cacophony of terror blending with the growls emanating from the menagerie of nightmares. Rachel pressed the gas harder, her foot shaking at the weight of despair. One of the creatures lunged toward her side, and she swerved violently, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The screech of tires shattered the air, mingling with frantic cries. "Did you see that?" a girl in the back seat gasped. "They're everywhere!" Before Rachel could respond, another flicker of light illuminated the scene. A flash from the gas station, its neon sign flickering back to life like a dying star. For a moment, she dared to hope. They could escape. All they had to do was get back inside. But the ground beneath them trembled again, and a chorus of low, mocking laughter erupted from the creatures. The sound clawed at Rachel's sanity, turning her thoughts chaotic with despair. They were taunting them, each laugh resonating as a reminder of their looming doom. "Hit the gas!" Rachel shouted, her voice swallowed by the chaos. Squeezing the steering wheel, she broke free from the grasp of fear. The tires screeched as they tore away from the parking lot, careening toward the road. The world outside blurred, trees and shadows merging into a single unholy mass. But ahead, through the forest, another flicker of light shone. A way out, perhaps, or maybe a trap waiting to ensnare them. "Rachel, what if it's a dead end?" her friend cried. The panic in her voice pierced through Rachel's resolve. "Trust me," Rachel pressed, determination igniting like a match held to gasoline. As they barreled toward the light, the shadows surged behind them, a ravenous wave of darkness close enough to feel its cold breath brush against their backs. With one last glance in the rear-view mirror, Rachel caught sight of the man from the gas station, standing amidst the creatures, his cruel smile widening, as if feeding on their fear. "Faster!" The light was expanding, morphing into a doorway, and everything in Rachel screamed for her to reach it. Just as they broke the tree line, horror washed over her. The light didn't lead to safety. A gaping void opened before them, an abyss that called out with an insatiable hunger. The road ended, plunging into darkness. But the ride wasn't over, not yet. "Rachel!" A voice broke through the panic. "What are we going to do?" In that suspended breath of time, the abyss whispered secrets of despair, and Rachel knew, instinctively, the worst was yet to come. "Hold on!" she screamed, closing her eyes, bracing for impact. What lay ahead in that consuming void? Would they face the night in a catastrophic plunge, or were there worse horrors awaiting them? The screams of her friends pierced the air. Time slowed as Rachel felt the weight of destiny closing in. She had only a split second to act. White-knuckled, she yanked the wheel hard to the right, trying to divert from the yawning chasm. The tires screeched, prayerful screams echoing as they narrowly brushed against the edge. They careened off the road, slamming into the underbrush, branches clawing at the windows as if the forest itself were alive, trying to snag them in its grip. The engine sputtered, rattling against the sudden shift, but it didn't die. It throbbed with a desperate pulse, refusing to yield to the night. "Go! Go! Please!" A girl in the back kicked the seat, panic boiling in her eyes. Rachel wasn't sure how much time they had left. With trembling hands, she slammed her foot on the gas again, sending the car into a wild lurch forward, breaking through the trees. Ahead, the other side of the underbrush opened up to a small, empty road. Rachel breathed a rough sigh of relief, but the relief was short-lived. The metallic tang of fear hung heavier in the air. From the depth of the forest, shadows emerged, fiendish bipeds blending seamlessly with the night, hungry mouths bared, shiny eyes reflecting the headlights. "Look out!" someone shouted, but it came too late. A figure leapt onto the hood, nails clawing, scratching against metal. It was a wretched thing, half human, half nightmare. The car jolted under the weight. "Get it off! Get it off!" screams erupted. Rachel wrestled the wheel, trying to shake the ghastly creature loose. With one swift motion, she slammed the brakes. The creature flew off into the darkness, letting out a chilling howl that echoed in response from the depths of the trees. The car skidded to a stop, with tires screaming. They were surrounded, dread coiling around them like serpents. The headlights barely penetrated the veil of darkness that loomed, figures shifting and slithering just beyond. There was no way back now. "It won't let us leave!" "Someone!" shouted, their voice barely above a whisper, but laden with the kind of terror that gnawed at the edges of sanity. Rachel's heart raced as she fumbled for the gear shift. "We have to keep moving!" But the creatures approached, advancing slowly, almost deliberately. Their laugh, it was worse than the screeches and wails. Each chuckle was a reminder of just how far they had allowed fear to take them. The man from the gas station loomed behind them, his silhouette rising among the ghastly forms, his smile impossibly wide. "We shouldn't have come here," Rachel muttered, the weight of her words heavy in the confined space. They'd only been looking for adventure. Now that thrill morphed into a malignant shadow. "Rachel!" A voice sharp as glass cut through her thoughts. "We need to decide. Do we go back to face that thing, or do we try to flee?" Silence filled the car, thick and palpable. Each friend stared at her, their eyes wide, boiling with panic and hope. "Are you nuts?" another shouted back. "What if they're waiting? We'll be cornered." Rachel swallowed. The decision crushed her. There was danger in every direction. In the silence, a feverish whisper echoed through the air, carried by the wind. They like the darkness. It wasn't just a sound, it was a heartbeat, a pulsing reminder of the very terror that surrounded them. "Which way?" Rachel finally asked, feeling the abyss churn beneath her. Desperation hung heavy in the air, each moment thick with uncertainty. The void beckoned, urging them into a darkened fate. What sinister games would fate play as they sat in that shadowed cocoon, dreaming visions shrouded in fear? The distant laughter rang out again, shrill and twisted as the creatures crept closer. And behind them, from the black space that beckoned, something stirred at the edge of their fate. Was escaping their only chance, or had they already sealed their own doom? The time for choice had come, and dread hung like a sword above their heads. The laughter faded, replaced by the sound of heavy breathing, the panic of her friends like a thunderstorm in confinement. Rachel's heart pounded. The creatures moved closer, their grotesque forms skittering between patches of darkness, blending into the overwhelming shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. "Rachel, please," pleaded the girl in the back. "We can't stay here." The headlights flickered, casting huge, dancing shadows across the trees. Rachel felt the heat of their stares, those hungry eyes searching for weakness. "We either drive forward, or we become their meal." The words scraped from another friend's lips, each syllable coated in terror. The realization hung in the air, stark and undeniable. The engine roared with a life of its own, almost shouting towards Rachel, urging her. She slammed the gear shift into drive, and just as she pressed the gas, a clawed hand smashed against her window. The face behind it twisted into a gruesome grin, twisted features illuminated by the sudden surge of light, thick, matted hair, skin stretched taut over sharp bones. "Go, now!" she shouted, terror flowing through her veins like ice. The car lurched forward, tearing into the shadows, tires spitting dirt and debris into the night. The road felt endless, but every stretch was lined with encroaching figures. They seemed to melt away and reform, their laugh echoing behind them, light and airy, yet heavy with malice. Rachel felt their presence closing in, like a noose tightening around her throat. As the trees blurred by, she glanced in the rearview mirror. One of the grotesque forms was keeping pace right behind them, sprinting on all fours. It was fast, too fast. Panic surged anew. Her foot instinctively pressed harder on the gas. "Faster! We have to get away!" someone screamed from the back, the fear evident in every syllable. But even the words held little weight against the nightmarish laughter that reverberated around them, taunting and relentless. They had left the path of the road long behind. Now they were barreling down a narrow, winding trail, surrounded by thick foliage on either side. The moonlight barely pierced through the canopy above, creating a sinister, flickering ambience that confused Rachel's sense of direction. Then came the sudden stop. A fallen tree blocked their path. Rachel slammed on the brakes, the world around them spinning, the car skiving to a halt with a violent jolt. They were trapped. "Back!" Rachel yelled. "We need to go back!" "Are you crazy?" the girl shouted, her voice trembling. "It's worse there!" Panic erupted into arguments, voices raised, fear morphing into anger, creating a toxic atmosphere. Rachel's mind spun, caught in a whirlwind of chaos, when the thudding returned. Heavy footsteps, hard and deliberate, echoed through the stillness, growing louder, surrounding them.
"We're running out of time," Rachel's voice broke through the clamor. The creatures were coming. Her heart raced with a primal urgency. But as she turned to face her friends, a shadow swept past her window, a faint whisper trailing behind it. "They'll get you." "Rachel!" A voice shattered her focus. "Look!" She turned, only to be greeted by an overwhelming wave of darkness pouring in from all sides. The trees twisted as if alive, limbs beckoning them, roots grasping to pull them down. The creatures now encircled the car, a wall of monstrous flesh and eyes aglow with insatiable hunger. "Hang on!" Rachel shouted, revving the engine, but the car sputtered, battling against the suffocating despair that clawed at her sanity. The laughter rippled through the night, taunting, echoing in her ears as she realized the truth. There was no escape. A sudden silence fell, a chilling hush that felt like the calm before a storm. "What did that voice mean?" Rachel whispered, her throat dry. "What are they waiting for?"
In that suffocating stillness, the creatures began their slow advance, fingers reaching, twisting shadows stretching towards them. Rachel's instinct screamed at her to act, but where? What if leaving the car was worse? As the figures drew nearer, all Rachel could do was grasp the wheel tightly and pray, the stench of terror flooding the air. And then one creature stepped forward. It leaned closer to her face, foul breath washing over her, and in a voice that was both her worst nightmare and a distant echo of someone familiar, it whispered, "Are you ready to join us?" The door behind them creaked, tremors of ice running down Rachel's spine. Had it always been locked, or had they simply sealed their fate? In a flash, they were all shattered pieces on a chessboard of primal fear, some desperately wanting to flee, and others captivated by the darkness, longing for its embrace. Time warped painfully as the shadows thickened. Which way was salvation, or was it already too late to choose? Rachel's heart hammering in her chest, she gripped the steering wheel, knuckles turning white. The creature's foul breath lingered in the air, thick with decay. Panic twisted her insides, and she could feel her friends' terror radiating off them like heat from a fire. Whispered arguments erupted behind her, two of them debating whether to open the doors. "No," Rachel spat, her voice cracking under the pressure. "We can't let them in." Another creature joined the first, slinking forward, its eyes gleaming with a predatory glint. It stretched out a clawed hand toward her window, tapping softly as if testing the glass, like a child trying to draw attention. The sound echoed in the silence, each tap a reminder of their imminent end. "Rachel, please!" one of her friends shouted, hysteria creeping into the edges of her voice. "We can't just sit here." In that moment, time froze. The shadows deepened, pressing against the car like a tidal wave. Rachel's breath hitched. The creature's eyes bore into her, unblinking and hungry. They were moments from being devoured by something far more sinister than she could ever imagine. "Think, think," she urged herself. She fumbled with the gear shift again, adrenaline surging through her veins like fire. With a growl, she attempted to start the engine. Would it roar to life, or would it leave them stranded in this nightmare? The dashboard lights flickered, and for a heartbeat her hope soared. Then there was a sputter, a dying gasp, then silence. The engine was useless. An agonizing realization swept over her. They were trapped,
prey, waiting for the inevitable. Behind her, she could sense the grasping fingers of despair creeping in, her friends whispering frantic plans, heightened breaths thick with dread. Something shifted in her gut, a primal instinct born of fear and desperation. "Wait!" she snapped, cutting through the clamor.
"If we all push together—" Another tap on the window, more forceful this time, rattling the glass. The creature shrieked a cacophony of laughter, a twisted mockery of their panic. It was a sound that burrowed deep into her mind, resonating with despair. "Get it away!" someone cried out, scrambling back against the seats. "Shut up," Rachel implored, drowning out their pleas. "We need to focus." But it was too late, for as each second passed, the thick shadows inched ever closer, wrapping fingers around the car, squeezing them into a claustrophobic hold. The creatures circled like sharks, darting into the light of the headlights, then disappearing back into the veil of darkness, taunting them. Suddenly, the rear-view mirror shattered, fragments of glass exploded outward, and another clawed hand slithered into the car through the open window. Rachel screamed and threw herself against the passenger seat as darkness poured in like ink, clouds of terror surrounding her. "Go!" she yelled, pushing her friends toward the back. But they were already paralyzed, staring into the choking blackness where their worst fears lay hidden. The last remnants of their hope flickered like a dying ember, shadows creeping from every direction. "What's the point?" one of her friends moaned, fear gripping her words as much as her throat. "Fight! We fight!" Rachel's voice rang with fragile determination. "We have to!" The creature, leaning closer with an insatiable grin, hissed what sounded like a word, a name. Rachel's name, twisting it in that sinister way only something dark could. It filtered through the air, cold and taunting, weaving into both her mind and heart. In that moment of terror, surrounded by flesh and shadow, there was a flicker of defiance in Rachel. Suddenly, she turned to her friends, desperation shifting to resolve. "We leave together or not at all. Now, push!" They scrambled, hands shaking, hearts racing. The thudding against the car escalated, claws raking across the metal. Rachel braced herself, and with a surge of adrenaline, they heaved forward together, fighting against the darkness as one. But would it be enough? The energy poured into her, driving her to push through the suffocating shadows. Outside, the laughter crescendoed, a frantic beat echoing through the silence. What awaited them beyond this moment? As they surged again, a piercing shriek echoed deep from within the woods, reverberating through every fiber of Rachel's being. Their fate lay in a chilling crossroads, and soon either choice would unleash an even darker terror. Now, with the boundaries between life and death thinning, which side would she choose? Would salvation still linger in the grip of an icy hand? Rachel's heart raced as adrenaline surged through her veins. The car shook as they pushed against the darkness, their desperation transforming into primal energy. But each clawing sound against the metal echoed louder, a reminder of the gnashing teeth that wanted more than just a taste of fear. Come on, Rachel urged, her voice barely a whisper amidst the rising chaos. They threw their weight against the doors, but they felt immovable, like a solid wall of fate. The creature's laughter, sharp and cold, sliced through the air, wrapping around them like icy tendrils. "Rachel, we have to do something!" one friend screamed, panic clawing at her voice. With a feverish burst of will, Rachel turned to the panic-stricken faces surrounding her. "We need to break the windows! Find something!" She grabbed the glove compartment, desperately pulling it open, but it was empty, an empty shell like their hope.
Here, another friend, Tyler, reached for a heavy flashlight, flickering and weak. He swung it toward the window, the glass seeming to shimmer under the creature's hungry gaze. "Do it!" Rachel shouted, sweat beading on her forehead. She gripped the passenger seat for leverage, ready to dodge. Tyler swung the flashlight with all his strength. The glass shattered, erupting in a spray of glimmering shards. The creatures outside recoiled, hissing and screeching, as if the sound of breaking glass disturbed their dreadful reverie. In that moment of triumph, Rachel felt a flicker of hope. "We can get out, now!" But as they prepared to crawl through the broken window, the twisted form of the creature lurched closer, a mass of shadows and teeth growing at an alarming rate. "Rachel!" someone shouted, pulling her back. "Look!" The creature's mouth widened impossibly, revealing what seemed like a bottomless pit, full of gnashing teeth and writhing tongues. It hissed again, the guttural sound seeping into their minds, each syllable a taunt, each breath a promise of death. Rachel's stomach turned as reality crashed down. This was no mere beast, but something much worse, a living embodiment of overwhelming terror. "Back! Get away!" she yelled, forgetting caution as she lunged for the other side of the car. Suddenly, an idea struck her, a wild and desperate notion. "The road!" she gasped, scrambling for the steering wheel. "If we can roll down the hill, maybe we can escape." "Are you crazy?" Tyler shouted, his eyes wide with fear. "There's no way we can—" "Do you want to die here?" she barked back, and the heat in her voice broke through their paralyzing shock. With shaking hands, she used her weight to turn the steering wheel while pushing her foot down on the brake. The shove sent them rolling toward the edge of the open door, the incline of the hill threatening to swallow them whole. "Hang on!" Rachel shouted as the car tipped dangerously toward the open window. For a split second, everything felt suspended. Then the car lurched forward, tumbling down the slope. Wind whipped past them, tearing through the car like a violent tempest, and soon the screech of metal replaced the eerie laughter behind them. But the joy of escape crumbled when they heard a spine-chilling growl reverberating from deep within the woods. The creatures had followed them. The forest was alive with sounds, crackling branches, heavy thuds, a symphony of dread. Crawling from the car, Rachel felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, her heart plummeting in her chest. They had fled the jaws of one nightmare only to plunge deeper into another. "There's nowhere to hide." Tyler's voice barely reached her, muffled by fear. In the twilight shadows, Rachel turned to her friends, dread clawing at her throat. "We have to find somewhere safe." But as the chilling growls got closer, Rachel felt a horrifying certainty settle. This wasn't just the beginning of their escape. It was now a race against something that thrived on their terror. And as a pair of glowing eyes pierced the gathering darkness, Rachel understood just how intimately they were being hunted. What happens when the night swallows us whole? Fear gnawed at her, leaving her speechless, just as the first creature lunged from the blackness, eager to claim its prize. The night unfurled like a dark curtain, swallowing every flicker of light. Rachel's heart thundered in her chest. In the dank air, she could taste the terror lingering beneath their skin, an electric current prickling her senses. They couldn't stay here. The creatures were relentless. "Run!" Rachel yelled, grabbing Tyler's arm and pulling him down the hill, forcing her friends to follow. They pushed through the underbrush, adrenaline fueling their limbs as the shrieks of their pursuers echoed behind them, vibrant and mocking. "Where do we go?" someone gasped, desperation lacing their voice.
It was time to make a stand, time to kick back against the darkness that threatened to engulf them. Rachel scanned the surroundings frantically. The old cemetery is nearby. We can take cover in one of the mausoleums. She knew the stories, the very heart of Elmwood, steeped in legends of dark spirits. What difference did it make? At this point, anything was better than waiting for death in the woods. They pushed on, racing toward the cemetery, cloaked in shadows that pulled at their clothes and snatched at their resolve. The graves pierced through the earth like teeth. As they stumbled through the cracked, uneven path, a sudden chill crawled up Rachel's spine. The spirits of Elmwood had awakened. "Over there!" Tyler shouted, pointing to a weathered mausoleum, its door hanging loosely on rusted hinges. "Get inside!" They dashed for safety, squeezing into the tight space. The stench of decay enveloped them, a musty odor that brought back the whispers she'd tried to ignore. They huddled together, hearts pounding like war drums. Inside, the light was minimal. Shadows danced like flickering flames, influenced by unseen breaths. "What now?" one of her friends panicked, breathing heavily.
Rachel took a deep breath, casting aside their short-lived fright for the survival mode kicking in. "We wait. It can't follow us in here, can it?" But even she knew it was a pitiful comfort. Outside, the darkness shifted like liquid, the creatures sending pulses through the air, hacking laughter mingling with dreadful hisses. They could almost sense the weight of eyes pressing at the door. It was a beastly game of cat and mouse, and they were the mice, trapped with no escape. The quiet fell thick, half hopeful, half dreadful. But Rachel felt it. The air was charged. Another sound joined the cacophony, a distorted whisper winding its way through the darkness. "You've hidden from me for too long." The voice was like ice in her veins. She shuddered. "Stay close," she whispered, gripping Tyler's arm. Beneath the surface, fear nestled deep, weaving dread into her very bones. Suddenly, the door rattled violently. The sound ricocheted through the mausoleum like cannon fire. Rachel's heart leaped into her throat. A terrible reality sunk in. They had lured the darkness to their hiding place. "Get ready!" Rachel shouted, eyes scanning for a weapon. There had to be something. "I see something!" Tyler exclaimed, pointing to a heavy iron rod propped against the wall. He grabbed it and held it high, a glimmer of defiance shining in his eyes. "Rachel," someone whispered, "what if there's a way to fight this?" She steadied her breath. "If it comes in, we don't let it take us." The air around them thickened. Every creak of stone outside made her heart race. Then a surprised gasp cut through the tension as the door gave one last shuddering swing. The shadowed figure hovered just beyond the threshold, a grinning creature, teeth sharp and menacing. "Easy," Rachel murmured, her voice unsteady. "When it enters." Time stretched as they braced themselves, fingers gripping the rod tightly. The creature slipped through, cold satisfaction twisting its features. But before it could advance, Rachel leaped, swinging the rod with every ounce of desperation she had left. The blow landed with a crack, and the creature shrieked, backing away in horror. But others soon followed, pressing against the doorway. They were overwhelmed, and the once vulnerable inside now felt like a flickering candle snuffed out by a sudden gust. "I won't let them take us!" Rachel yelled, feeling a surge of power from deep within. "Fight!" With each strike, she could hear the encouragement from her friends beside her, the fear slowly morphing into something transformative. It was their rage against the dark, a pact forged by survival. They swung, pushed, and shouted, forming a barricade against temptation. The creatures howled in pain and frustration, their shrieks reverberating through the mausoleum like a dreadful symphony, battering against their resolve. "We need to move," Tyler shouted, sweat rolling down his brow. "Now!"
Rachel turned, catching a fleeting glimpse of the graveyard, its shadows shifting menacingly. But she had a plan. "There's a back exit!" she cried, and together they sprinted toward it, their feet pounding against stone, echoes of resilience blending with the cries behind. Bursting through the back door, they emerged into the night, minds ablaze with purpose. But they had not truly escaped. "Rachel," Tyler breathed, pointing. A wall of darkness loomed before them, slithering alive. The familiar voice echoed in the shadows. "You cannot leave." And yet there was a glimmer of hope. Rachel turned to her friends, eyeing the horizon where dawn's first light threatened to break. "We push through together. We don't look back." The hellish laughter rang out sharp, but together they dove into the oncoming dawn, fueled by a collective will to reclaim their lives. Shadows danced around them, but they stood strong, side by side, pounding hearts and resolute spirits, determined to rewrite their story. "What happens next is ours to decide," Rachel said, leading them toward the awakening light. With that, they burst from the night as the breaking dawn swallowed the shadows behind them, forever altering the connection between Elmwood and its darkest tales. They chose to endure, to live, and in that decision they found their strength. They knew the fight wasn't over, not yet, but as they emerged from the clutches of night, they stepped into a world tinted with a newfound vibrancy, a soft promise of hope spreading across the horizon, breathing life back into weary souls. Together they had ventured into darkness and returned, weathered yet resolute, drawing strength from each other and a fierce will to confront whatever awaited beyond. As they walked into the dawn, Rachel knew they would face the shadows again, but now they had each other, and that bond could light even the darkest corners of Elmwood. Now they could rest, for the darkness nagged, but they were unyielding. Together they belonged to the light. And that was the most powerful story of all. Don't just walk away now. Subscribe immediately to the channel to keep up with our thrilling tales. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions, thoughts, and wild theories about this heart-stopping conclusion. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this unbelievable ending. Don't wait even one more second to pass it on. True fans know this support matters.